Alright, hi everybody, welcome to Rennsport. We're here in a Mercedes-Benz AMG GT3 at a 24-hour layout of Nordschleife on a big day for the sim. It's moved from closed beta to open beta. Of course means that anybody now can jump onto the Epic Games Store and download the game for yourself. And we're up to version 1.9 of the game, which of course comes with the usual list of improvements from the developer, including physics updates and texture updates, bug fixes, all that sort of thing. I've been lucky enough, I've had the closed beta for quite a few months now. I applied for a key sometime late last year, got access early this year after a few months of waiting, and I can honestly say when I first fired it up I very quickly got out of the game again. Lasted about 10 minutes before I exited promptly. It wasn't very good, very unpolished at that stage, which you sort of have to expect, I suppose, from a very early access title. I went back to it many months later when there was some new content that they dropped, which I was interested in, so I jumped back in and it was vastly improved in many areas. So I said with today's update we've got a couple of new cars. There's not a great deal of cars in the game at the moment. I think maybe 10 or a dozen. A couple of new GT4 cars what they dropped today. Obviously Nordschleife was a big part of the content drop today, and we'll talk about that in a minute as well. VR support has been added, which I can't speak about because I don't have VR. I'm a single 49-inch widescreen user. And obviously we have then also the Founders Pack, which we'll talk about in a second as well. That's the way of raising money for the developers, as we now finally make our way onto the good part, the Nordschleife itself. And again, so it's a laser scanned version of Nordschleife, like most of the modern versions are, you know, from R Factor 2 or ACC. They all buy the same laser scan data, and so of course what they do with that data is the important thing. Does it feel like the real thing should? Looks and feels good so far, that's for sure. So the biggest thing with Rennsport when you drive it, and it's a question I've had myself over and over again in many of the videos I've done, is simply why. Why and where and how and what. Where does it fit into the sim racing genre compared to everything else that's currently available? That's its biggest challenge. Why? Because for example, with this content I got today, I obviously just got the basic Founders Pack, which cost me in Australian dollars about $29. So I think it's maybe 18 euro or something like that. I'm not sure what it is in US dollars, but basically the summary is it's the probably the most expensive bit of DLC I've ever bought for any of my simulators. I think the previous record was held by the Circuit de la Sarthe, the Le Mans 24-hour circuit download for R Factor 2. I think that cost me about $18 Australian when I got that. But this, or essentially what I brought is just the Nordschleife. You do get a car token. Don't know what that means, if you can buy a car later on in the store, but so for my $28, so I just essentially got the Nordschleife, which I'm happy with because that's what I wanted for this video, of course. But it goes up there, I think, to $60 was the middle tier, and then I think $99, so basically $100 for the maximum tier, and that's essentially a whole game. And I don't think you get a great deal for your money. It's obviously there by the developers to raise some cash to continue development of the game, which is fair enough. Nobody's forcing you to buy any of the Founders Packs. You can certainly jump on and there will be free content for you to play in Rennsport. And there are a few liveries and things, but again, I'm not a huge fan of different liveries, especially when you're inside the car. You can't see the liveries anyway, so I don't see the point of, you know, fancy liveries and the like. I also understand that in the top tier, I believe you name on, I think that's on a fictional track they've done in the Rennsport logo, you get your name on that track somewhere. Again, not something I'm particularly concerned with, to be quite honest. Certainly not going to make you pay $100 to have my name on on a fictional track. And while they've improved the textures, it's certainly still not perfect. There's a lot of popping of textures up in the distance. I'm on a 2080 Ti graphics card here. I've got everything pretty much maxed out on Epic. But there's still quite a lot of textures and things like the catch fencing on the side there. Get a lot of loss of detail with that. It's not very crisp and clear like it should be. I think the game generally looks pretty good. There's some nice reflections there you can see coming off the bonnet from the sun. It certainly feels alive, like there's lots happening. You can see the sun chairs out there for the spectators and the camping areas. You can see the access roads there. Trees look pretty good. Very nice 3D trees. We dip into the carousel for the first time and the car fights back like you expect it to. I think overall it's a pretty good looking game. Nice road textures as well. Obviously not as much graffiti on Nords these days. They have relayed it a few times in the last couple of years, or in the recent past, so not as much graffiti as there used to be. It certainly looks and feels like Nords, we all know it. So they always the same laser scan data, so it should feel very familiar no matter what simulator you play. I suppose so the big question, like I said, where does this fit into the landscape? Because you've got to remember, if you want to drive GT3 cars, most people are going to gravitate towards ACC, because that's what it does. And there are plenty of GT3 cars here in Rennsport. It's obviously going to be a big part of their game going forward. There's also a few hypercars and LMDH cars. But again, at the moment, in that sort of genre, you would move towards LMU, Le Mans Ultimate, by the makers of R Factor 2, of course. And they also the developers of Rennsport, they talked about mods being a big part of the game. And in the base game, there is a mod created track that someone's done. Again, I don't know if that's someone from the development team or just a random person has done the Singapore track that they've got. But again, very vague on the mods as well. If it's from a quality studio like VRC or RSS from Assetto Corsa, for example, they're fantastic mods and they're okay. If it's just your mate Bob in his basement making a Formula 1 car that looks more like a bus, that's not the sort of mod that I really want, to be honest. So Rennsport's quite vague on mods at the moment and how they will actually work and the buying and selling of those mods. But again, if you want mods, you would obviously go for Assetto Corsa, or R Factor 2 has lots of mods as well. So that's the problem. Where does it fit? Obviously AC Evo is coming out in a few months as well, which again you would assume would have mod support. So I just don't know where this fits. And you can see the textures here, the shadows are quite bad there as well. They've just come into, they've loaded in now, but they were quite bad there for a while. In terms of where it fits in the whole genre, because this is a very expensive bit of DLC. As I said, it was $28 essentially for one track. Now I think I would say, in my experience, where R Factor 2 has the most expensive content, I'll put a lot of money into R Factor 2. I'll put a lot of money into Race Room. That's probably my two main ones. So what's going to make me want to spend my hard-earned money on this as opposed to something else? So at the moment there's no subscription based service by the look of it. I'm not sure that comes later on, but obviously iRacing has that genre all sealed up. This will certainly have, looks like there will always be a free component, they've said. But how many cars and tracks you get for the free part, I'm not 100% sure on. But certainly a big part of the game will be DLCs. And they've also been talking about in-game transactions with you owning a car, you can sell your car on. Again, all that sort of stuff doesn't interest me at all. I'm quite happy just to stick to whatever the developers bring out in terms of content. In terms of the driving feel, the first thing you have to do with Rennsport is turn down the FFB at 100%. you'll just about break a thumb sometimes if you hit something at the wrong angle. So I've turned mine down to probably 85 to 90% because it's very, very rough. Can be a little bit grainy as well in terms of the force feedback, that sort of R factor 2 sort of graininess. In terms of where it fits on the sort of scale of the force feedback, it's hard to say. It's I said a little bit grainy in some respect. Does have fantastic weight, fantastic detail through the force feedback. You can feel the tyres loading out, the suspension loading out. Definitely over the bumps and stuff. Feels really good. Feel down there, the car loading up there through the right hander, all the weight shifting to the left. It's probably, I don't know, I've also ACC's got the worst force feedback, but to be honest, that game's a little bit better for me the last couple of months. Now that I've finally applied all the setup hacks there in ACC, it definitely drives a lot better than what I thought it used to back in the day. For me, Race Room is still number one in terms of physics and force feedback. Followed of course by R Factor 2, and then next tier down they're all about the same as Assetto Corsa and AMS2 and ACC. This does feel very good, but again, is it good enough to make me change from all the other sims? Yeah, absolutely not. Certainly, yeah, Nordschleife looks great. It does feel alive, feels good, plenty of stuff happening around the circuit. And I want to for my $28 that I've just plonked down on it. I really like the HUD too with Rennsport, nice and simple and clean. I have moved all the HUD elements into the center of my screen here, just so you can see it for the video. Normally I'd have most of this stuff out to the wings there. I've obviously got a lot more real estate both left and right than what you can see on the screen there at the moment. Let's go very nice basic tyre HUD there. You can see what's happening in terms of when it heats up and the wear of the tyres there. There's a nice little widget there with your force feedback and all your inputs, accelerator, etc. That all functions quite nicely. The sounds are really good as well, especially the little Porsche GT3 that I drove at Spa last week in the time trial sounds fantastic. A nice suite of replay controls as well. Love that corner there at Nord. It's probably my favourite corner on the track. It just dips down a little bit off camber. So the car reacting to the bumps there quite nicely. A little bit of hazing there with the trees as it's loading in. Again, still a lot of work to be done with the texture side of it. I think overall it looks quite good. It's certainly enjoyable to drive, there's no doubt about that. It's, you can have a lot of fun driving it and hot lapping. Obviously haven't done a lot of online stuff. I don't think there's too many Aussies on board at the moment, or in this region of the world at least. Seen a lot of Euros and Americans obviously on the time trials. As I said, certainly a bucket load of fun to get in and drive. Definitely absolutely worth checking out. There's no doubt about that. There is, as I said, a large free component at the moment when you jump onto the open beta. I just don't know how it's going to hold anybody's interest for more than a passing look. I was rattling there through the carousel. I'll just push the car a little bit more now. Yeah, it does have absolutely fantastic detail through the steering wheel though. So apart from a little bit of grayness, you may be able to dial it out as well with the settings. I can't say I've dived into the force feedback settings a great deal. I'm not actually sure, to be honest, what half the stuff does. It's one of those sort of things that if you don't explain what that slider does, I tend not to touch it. If it's a bit vague as to what it's going to do, I don't want to be touching stuff and then going back and forward changing things over the course of a few hours. So I've left it basically just stock, so except for just reducing the force feedback, of course. But yeah, absolutely fantastic fun to drive. It does drive very well. That is the thing. At the end of the day, these are driving simulators. No matter what you think about, the politics of certain things, like with motorsport games and R-Factor 2, or whatever you think about the policy of these guys with selling founders packs and all that sort of stuff, and selling DLC before the game's even released. Whatever you think about all that, end of the day, they are driving simulators, and you've got to judge them on how they drive it. At the moment, for what is still a fairly early access title, it drives very well. Perfectly fine. You can get in, drive a GT3 car, everything feels familiar, drives how it should. Nordschleife acts like it should. It looks decent enough, I think. I expect the textures and everything to improve as the game gets closer to a proper 1.0 release. I think you have a great time, and it's absolutely nothing wrong with the game as it is. So you don't have to pay for anything extra at the moment if you don't want to. I've just chosen to buy this basic founders pack so I could do the video here for Nordschleife. I certainly wouldn't spend. I certainly wouldn't do the next tier, the $60 or the $90 tier. That's for sure. Don't think you get your money's worth for that. These, I said, essentially a whole game. I'm certainly not prepared to pay that much for it. As we're coming to finish our lap now, we're quite a bit up there, and only our second lap. Literally just fired the game up and jumped in, so we've made up about 10 seconds over that second lap there. So I said, thanks very much for watching as always, guys. Jump on and check it out, and see what you think. Take care.